My name is Rosi Goldsmith, and people sometimes call me the plant whisperer or the muscle whisperer. I have been communicating with plants and with little beings of nature since I was little. And I didn't know any different, and I didn't know what they were called, and there were no names for it, and I just assumed everybody did it. Nobody told me any different. So then I read the Findhorn materials in 1977, and I realized that they were like making it available for the world to talk to plants and insects in their garden. So I had a community garden at the time. I went out to my community garden, just started talking to everything. It was the most natural thing. And I made a few mistakes, like I threw some grubs out into the street. And they got mad and they chewed up all of my squashes. I realized that was a mistake and I apologized, and I decided I would never do that again. And then my gardening partner, I said, oh, here, read these Findhorn books. You can talk to plants and insects in your garden too. And she said, no, Rosie. And I said, oh yeah, anybody can. That's what the books are about. And she said, no, Rosie, anybody can't. And after we argued a bit, she said, Rosie, you need to teach about this. And I said, no. So many years later, I had a dream. And in a dream, there was an angel that unrolled a scroll. And I don't mean to offend anybody's religious sensibilities, but the angel said, this is what God wants you to do in this life. And I went, oh, okay. And that morning, I went up on the hillside. I was living in Grants Pass. I worked at an elder facility, and I was a caregiver for elderly and people with disabilities. And I had a placement service for people with disabilities, so I just worked with elderly. But I was also the coordinator for retreats, and I was the secretary and bookkeeper for the woman who ran this foster home. And so I went up, and it was out in the country. I went up on the hillside above their home getting ready for a retreat. And this very large presence showed up and said, we want you to teach workshops on communicating with plants and insects. And I said, I think you must have the wrong person. And she said, no, we like how you communicate. You use the heart. And I said, excuse me, I don't do workshops. There's some really smart people in the world who write lots of books and who teach these things. And I'm not one of them. And they said, no, we want you to teach. And I said, really, there's much better people. And they said, then prove it. So I went out and I read about 100 books or so, and by the time I finished, they said, did you prove it? And I said, no, nobody's teaching the way that I do it. And they said, we want you to teach. And they made some predictions that I thought was completely improbable. One of my dearest mentors is Dorothy McLean of Findhorn, and they said, you are going to meet her, and you are going to teach her what you do, and it's going to change her life. And I thought, oh, sure. But that's exactly what happened. So I was kind of still postponing this. After I'd read all these books, I wrote up reviews of them, and they're still on my website if you want to read the reviews of all the books that I read then. And I kind of was still reluctant, and then the nature spirits, what I call the devas. Deva is a Sanskrit word for shining ones. It's kind of equivalent to what we call angels, but for me, I like it because it doesn't have religious influences in Western thinking the way angels does, and it doesn't have the northern British Isles implications of the fairy world, so it doesn't have a lot of the other stuff that overlays other words. So I call them devas, but if you want to translate to fairies or nature spirits or the angelic realm, or if you're from other areas of the world, it's Lakumi, or there's people, Africans and people from Africa, people from Japan, all over the world have different names for these beings. And it's normal and natural for all of them. And there's even Yiddish ones. Okay, Schmelterkreuz or something like that. Anyway, I took a workshop on that. So they came to me and they said, are you going to be like Jonah? Do we have to feed you to the whales or what? I said, no whales for me, I'll get on it. So I started teaching. Yeah, I started teaching 2001 to 2009. I taught these workshops, and then I told them, I am still no good at organizing, if you really want me to teach, you have to have somebody else organize this stuff. So I kind of backed off on that, and I still taught classes for children and adults to communicate with plants and insects in their garden. Children don't have barriers to this. So it's like really easy. You don't have to overcome anything. When I teach adults, we often have barriers, and it comes from our culture, comes from the belief in human dominance, and I'll be getting into that later. So that's a little bit of my history. In addition to all this weird stuff, I have a BA in speech communication with a minor in physics, and a lot of what I teach is based on very standard communication principles of how we communicate. So I'm practicing one of those things right now, which is I'm not straining my voice, but I'm speaking loud enough for 100 people to hear me, because this is what's called projection in communication studies, okay? Which means, you know, I learned, you imagine that the person you want to speak to is at the back of the room. You just open up your heart and you talk to them, and it's no effort. So this is something that's part of standard communication practices, and that's part of how I teach. And what I'm going to be talking about today, and then we're going to do the blessing of Reverend Pipe. What I'm going to be talking about is some of the barriers that humans have to communication, understanding about plant intelligence, and the science that's behind it. Even though I came into it just like knowing it, I was really kind of pretty far out. My family didn't like it. They thought, "You talk to fairies, really?" I go, "Okay." You know, but it's now more common. There's a children's book series on talking with trees. There's a BBC documentary called The Wood Wide Web, National Geographic documentary. A lot of these researchers have come out with YouTubes. It's very popular. I'm actually part of a group that has over 900 people on Facebook, and it makes me feel like, oh, I finally found where I belong. And it's called Tree Whisperers and something rather else, and biobalancers. I don't know what the biobalance part is. So there's people on the West Coast, East Coast, who are teaching this. That's where a lot of those people come from. I found one person on the West Coast who's teaching this. He's in San Diego, so he and I are corresponding. I want to find other people who are doing this so I don't feel so weird. But in IONS, I feel normal. So that's kind of my background. Let's see, did I leave out anything important? Probably not. I really believe that all of nature is intelligent, alive, and has consciousness. And my experience is we can communicate with it, and there's now really solid science backing that up. And I feel so validated that there's good science, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But I want to ask, first of all, are any of you like really science-oriented? Do any of you have kind of a scientific brain? Okay, so I brought some really sophisticated science articles, and I brought 2 copies, so you're just in luck, of some of the most recent research. And then there's a lot of other research. I was going to try to compile them for the Vancouver presentation I give. And by the way, I want to give a thank you to all of you for coming, and a special thanks to Dottie Coons, who told Teresa that I had something to offer. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm here for you, and I'm here to learn what it is you already know, and I'll speak to that rather than what I plan to speak to. How's that? All right. Anything anybody wants to say about this? I'm going to talk about human biases, but I'm also going to talk about, this is the time of the solstice, when the trees have withdrawn their energy down into their roots. And they have withdrawn that energy because they're getting ready to burst forth in spring. Similarly, what I learned, how many of you went to the 18th International IONS Conference? Oh my gosh, I was the only one there. Okay, it was fabulous. It blew my mind, because I was just still hesitant. I'm what I call a reluctant prophet. I kind of go, I'd really rather not. But IONS was just, I found myself crying so many times to hear dozens of speakers whose books I had lining my walls, filling up my bookshelves for 25 years, and they were speaking there. It was like really amazing. And plus a lot of new speakers. And so I attended the pre-conference that was called something like, we don't end here. I think Richard Hammerschlag talked about that earlier here,
Yes.
which is that the boundary, our boundary is not our bodies. We are not isolated individuals. We are connected to everything. Also, there was Roland McCready of Heart Math, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later, which is about the heart-brain coherence. So he was also here?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
We Skyped
okay.
him, yeah.
All right.
Our meetings.
And then there was somebody last month who was talking about spoon bending.
Yeah.
Okay, and he was talking about, you know, he worked, I wasn't here because it was sold out, but he was talking about how long he worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. He practiced for the long time. What it took was clear determination. He was not going to give up, and he failed a lot before he succeeded. And he talked a bit about what went into his success, but I wanted to say he didn't talk about determination with this word. But if you want to break through your barriers and overcome your own biases and overcome your own paradigm, you can do it. And part of what I intend to show and demonstrate and teach this afternoon is that collectively, what I learned from IONS, collectively, when we bring our hearts and our minds together with a focus, with a pure intention, with love and compassion, we have the power to change what's going on. And I'm going to have several meditations about that. But this, the fellow who did the spoon bending had determination, he had focus. He also went into altered states of consciousness, which is like what we're going to practice some exercises. So that's enough of the introduction about what we're going to cover. And then we're going to have Reverend Paulette Pipe. She was one of the ones that just brought me to tears at the IONS conference.
So I just invite you to close your eyes or lower your lids and just take a deep breath in and slowly, slowly exhale all the air. One more time, a deep breath in, hold it, and exhale. As you breathe into this moment, I invite you to move from the intellect into your heart space and invite your soul to remind you why you are here by asking and answering the question, who am I willing to be in order to co-create an extraordinary experience that will accelerate the possibility, from possibility to potential, from potential to reality. Who am I willing to be? And just allow an adjective, a descriptive word to come to mind that describes who you are willing to be to co-create this sacred arena this weekend. And now silently roll that word around on your tongue. And let it land in your heart. And now whisper it into the room. I am willing to be, and then your word. I am willing to be powerful. One more time, a little louder. I am willing to be, and then your word. I am willing to be. Now a little bit louder. I am willing to be. I am willing to be aware. And now loudly, so we can set and let this word fill this space. I am willing to be. I am willing to be powerful. These words are spoken into existence and go forth now and accomplish as they have been spoken, for they have been decreed in the name and through the energy of the universe that is the creative process for this accelerating possibility. And so it is. A few years ago, I was at a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and he had the choir, the male and female choir, to the left and right of him, and he was sitting in front of a big bowl, and as they sang, he would sound the bell. He placed his hand on his heart, and then swept his hand across his chest, and extended his palm out and touched his ring finger and thumb tip to tip, and then turned his palm and sent out what I consider to be the love from his heart. So what we're going to do today, we're going to extend that blessing to each of the continents and all of the inhabitants, the vegetation, the land, the aquatic life, the leadership, the politics, everything on that continent. We're going to extend that. So would you practice that with me? Just rest your hand on your heart and sweep your hand across your chest. Extend your palm up and out as an offering of love. Ring finger and thumb tip to tip. Turn your palm and release. All right, you're ready. Breathe with me into our intention. Let everything fall away that is not of this moment. And send love to our beautiful planet. May this planet be at peace and at ease, and renewed and sustained. May all who dwell here be enriched, be included. May they matter. They do matter. Every being, every field and forest, every ocean. So may peace dwell here, as it does in the intention and the heart that we have set today.
Trees shudder in the wind, they said, may peace be on this land. May peace
Take a deep breath in
on this
and exhale. Place your hand on your heart. Take a breath and breathe into the palm of your hand. Sweep your hand across your chest. Extend. Ring finger and thumb tip to tip. Release. And now we're going to do that for each and every planet, and I will light a candle to designate each planet.
It's a planet, continent.
I light this candle for the continent and the people of Africa. If you feel so moved, I invite you, those who feel moved, to stand in proxy, unless you are actually from Africa. Stand in proxy for the continent of Africa, for the possibility of peace, for the possibility of ease, for the possibility of grace. May the continent of Africa and its people, its vegetation, its aquatic life, the birds of the air, the beings of the field, every person, every child, every energy that dwells there, may you be protected from harm. May you be well and at ease. May you be whole and healthy, and may you know positive possibility, and may it be accelerated now. Place your hand on your heart. Sweep your hand across your heart. Ring finger tip to tip. Africa. And as you're all standing, you may keep standing. As we affirm this idea for the continent and people, the lands of Antarctica. For its people, its children, its leadership, its politics, every aspect that is open now for renewal and healing. Take a deep breath in with me and exhale. And let this light that has been lit in this candle shine for all who dwell here.
May peace be on this land.
May you be open to peace and possibility. And all who stand here stand in proxy for peace as a possibility, healing and restoration as a possibility. May this continent of Antarctica and all who dwell here be free, be protected from harm, be healed, whole and at ease, whole and healthy, be well and be open to the peace and possibility that wants to be activated in you now to heal every aspect of this continent. Take a breath with me. Exhale into your hand. Sweep your hand across your chest. Ring finger and thumb tip to tip. And bless Antarctica. I light this candle for the continent, the people, the land, the possibility for Asia. May all who dwell here be protected from harm. May all be well and at ease. May all be whole and healthy. May you all know positive possibility activated on this continent now in every needed place and way. Take a deep breath in. Exhale the breath into your heart, from your heart into your hand, and sweep your hand across your chest. Extend your hand out, ring finger and thumb tip to tip, and bless the continent of Asia. May you be well and at ease.
May peace rest in this land.
And now, oh, you need to go back, I think. Could you make it go back for me to Australia, as I light this for the continent of Australia? No? Okay, well, we'll do Australia and Europe together. There we are. Thank you for being open to blessing the continent of Australia and all who dwell here, the people, the children, the vegetation, the ocean, all of it. May you be well and at ease. May you be protected and safe. May you be whole and healthy. May you know and be open to positive possibility being accelerated in you now, activated in you now. Take a deep breath in with me. Exhale the breath into the palm of your hand and sweep your hand across your chest. Extend your palm out. Ring finger tip to tip with your thumb. Turn your hand to Australia and bless Australia.
May peace rest in this land.
Europe, may you be blessed. May your people be blessed. May every aspect of this continent be healed and whole, at well, protected from harm, at ease, whole in every way, sustained in every way, on every level. May peace be on this land. Take a deep breath in with me. And exhale the breath into your hands and sweep your hand across your chest. Ring finger, tip to tip. Turn your hand and bless the continent, its people, every aspect of the continent of Europe.
May peace reign on this land. May peace rest in this land.
And now I light this candle for the continent of North America. Take a deep breath. Exhale the breath.
When the elders came,
we bless every aspect of the continent of North America and its people, its governance, its lands, the air, the sea, every aspect. May you be whole and well. May you be at ease. May you be protected from harm. May you be renewed and sustained. May you be in the possibility that wants to be activated now for health, wholeness and healing on this land. May we all know and experience peace as we breathe into our hand. Extend our hand across our chest. Ring finger tip to tip. And release that blessing to the continent and the people and the lands of North America. And now, South America. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath and exhale all the air.
when the elders
Feel your feet making contact with the ground. Be grounded into this moment as we know peace and blessings, healing and order, and all that is necessary to bring this continent, the continent of South America, into a vibrational match that it is, for peace and possibility to be activated. May you be well and at ease. May you be whole. May you be protected from harm. May you be open to the possibility that wants to be activated in you now, accelerated through you now. Breathe into your hand. Hand extended out. Ring finger and thumb tip to tip. Turn your hand and extend it out. Blessings on all of the continents. You may be seated.
I don't know if my PowerPoint is going to show. How was that blessing for all of you? Yeah. I'm so glad I got to share that with you. So we're a little bit behind. I'm going to kind of ad-lib and cut out parts of my presentation so that we end on time. And it may be a little ragged, but I'll figure it out as we go. So I'm going to ask us, because this is the solstice, to ask, what have we cultivated this year? Just as she asked you to go inside and find a word that represented what you were coming to, I'm going to ask, what have we cultivated this year? What did we root? If we were trees, what have we stored that's going to get ready? So the inner reflections now is, what have we cultivated this year? What did we root? What have we stored up getting ready for spring? Since IONS, this conference this year was about Possibility Accelerator and how our planet is undergoing a transformation, and humanity is also. So it's one of the things I learned from IONS is that we are moving into a new era, because we have had an old relationship with each other of dominance or competition or greed or wars, and we're moving into a new era of cooperation and love and compassion and becoming one with. And so this is what I'm asking us to imagine. What have we stored this year that we can use to launch into a new spring? What have we got? So just kind of think of one word. What have we got in our roots? What are the strengths that we have built this year that we can draw from as we get ready to help be part of this transformation of this world and the blessing that we can do collectively? When Reverend Pipe was doing that blessing, I just started crying because all of a sudden I could feel the power in the room of her blessing and 700 people doing this blessing. And I knew that we were literally changing the world at that time.
Mhm.
So I have started to look for where are other people changing the world. So then the question is, what kind of new life will emerge from within us as we move towards spring? To find a word from that. What have we cultivated? And what kind of new life are we getting ready to offer? So, it can be scary thinking that we're doing this alone, okay? However, we are not alone. And by the way, all these people have given me permission to have their pictures. This little boy in that picture, his dad just called me up just before I came saying he was going to hope to come, but he didn't know if he could. He said he has learned to start talking to trees. They took him to Yosemite, and this little boy would walk up to a tree and hug it and start talking to it. He's just babbling to the tree, but he really got the message that it's okay to talk to trees. So these were some of the first people in one of my workshops. We are not alone. We are doing this together. Okay, and I'm not the only one teaching this. Since the July IONS conference, I have found many people and organizations who are teaching people to communicate with nature. I think I already said that a bit in the introduction. Over 900 members of the Tree Whisperers group. So when something is witnessed by just one person, we can be accused of being delusional or crazy. But when it's witnessed by more than one person, it starts becoming real and it's accepted. When thousands of us, and I'm including all of you, are called from the heart to be part of this transformation of humanity in the world, we are not alone. When hundreds of thousands are participating in this shift of consciousness, together we can bless and transform humanity and heal the earth. I'm going to tell a little story. It's about being witnessed by more than one person. So I told you I was the organic gardening coordinator for an elder facility from 2002 until 2007. And that's part of when I was teaching all these workshops. Well, one of the people who was in my workshop was a backup gardener with me when I had an injury and I couldn't do stuff. And we had planted this huge field of corn. How many of you know about GMOs? Everybody, okay. So GMOs for corn, when corn, you cannot isolate, really. The pollens travel up to 30 miles. So you can have contamination from GMOs up to 30 miles away. So even though I bought organic, certified, GMO-free corn seeds, this field I knew was contaminated. So I was with my friend who was helping me with the garden, and I said, what if we could ask the devas and nature spirits, you've heard this story before, I know, to cleanse the GMOs from this corn? And so my friend and I looked at each other and I asked, and this was a prayer that went from the heart, I said, could I please have the presence of the devas of corn, of this, the corn, natural normal corn? Can I also have the presence of the devas of GMO? Could I ask you to please free all the corn genes so that they return to normal corn genes and are freed of any genetically modified organisms? When I said that prayer, both of us saw the cornfield glow in light. So this is when it's witnessed by more than one person, you're not crazy. So I knew that I wasn't crazy because she saw it too. So then I thought, what if this is a way to transform some of the toxins that we've put on the earth? And I put the word out. If there's any organic farmers that are already getting their, already being certified and are at risk of losing their organic certification because of potential GMO contamination, if they are getting tested before and after, because I wasn't as much a scientist then as I am now, but I knew you needed to have evidence. So I just put the word out. and that I wanted to teach them how to use their hearts to communicate with the devas of nature and with the genes, and to call this forth and to see if they could change what was happening. So finally some farmers answered, and they were farmers in Hawaii that were threatened with losing their organic certification for the entire papaya industry, organic papayas in Hawaii. So these farmers called me, and I had offered in my broadcast I had offered to fly to wherever the farmers were so I could teach them. And they said, oh, you do not need to fly to us. We know what devas are. We know what nature spirits. Just teach us how to do the thing that you're doing. So I corresponded with them a bit. And papayas are very difficult, because when you have a papaya tree, you don't know if it's been contaminated until you have the seed and you've grown it into a tree. You've got 3 to 5 years of investment in your crop before you even know if it's contaminated with GMOs. So people are really at risk, like their whole industry was really at risk, because there's a lot of GMOs in Hawaii. There's a big movement to fight it. And these people were part of that movement, but they were helpless about losing their entire organic certification. So they already knew about devas, and I just instructed them on this heart meditation, and that's part of why I love Reverend Pipe, is because I use the heart. That's part of how I teach. So they went out and did this. And have you ever heard of not having not having organic papayas from Hawaii? No, it was all done. And they taught all the other Hawaiian farmers. So at a workshop that I gave in Los Angeles recently, there was somebody from Hawaii, and she said, yeah, I remember that when that was a big deal. And all of a sudden it went away. She said, Hawaiian farmers all talk to each other. I said, I figured that. And she said, I remember when there was no longer any threat for Hawaiian papayas. So the entire industry was saved. So I know that this can be replicated. And what I'm saying to you is that all of us together have this power to transform the harm that we have done to the planet with love and compassion and this awareness. So I invite you to engage with me. And when I talk about thousands and hundreds of thousands, going to the next one. So I attended the IONS conference. There was the IONS Possibility Accelerator experience, which is part of what motivated me to get these classes launched and to start teaching this. If you want to, you can find the recordings of the Possibility Accelerator experience. They're online. If you feel called to a mission, whatever your skills, whatever your gifts, and you want to know how to bring it out to the world, IONS has a lot of material on that. In that class, online class, which was several months, there were 92 organizations that were identified by Possibility Accelerator participants that have supported their shift in consciousness. So I don't have all 92 here, but I want to see if you recognize any of these. They asked, what communities have supported your shift in consciousness? And these were ordered by global, oops, I'm going too fast. Here's quite a few of them. Okay, these are getting cut off, but it's okay. So 16 million with Amma, Contemplative Outreach, Tiny Buddha, Gaia. Okay, so there's, see if you recognize any of these. Have you participated in any of these? Since I got this list, I started looking up these organizations, and they are so full of heart and so full of love. Many of these are just completely amazing. Do you recognize any of these here? What do you recognize? You're nodding.
Sherry Ann Williamson. Greg on B.
Shambhala.
Marianne.
Hay House, right?
Yeah.
Greg Braden.
Yes.
Marianne.
Okay.
Plenty of them. We all recognize them.
Okay, more of them. Byron Katie, Tara Brock, Bruce Lipton. Many of these people were actually at the IONS conference, but look how many millions of people have had their consciousness shifted. Heart Math, also at the IONS conference, the Shift Network, Spirituality and Health, many of these. Adyashanti.
Thrive.
You recognize, which one do you recognize?
Thrive.
Thrive, yes. The Thrive movement, very good. Okay. and IONS. There's more. I mean, I didn't include all of them, but I wanted to get to where we had IONS. So, so I'm going to kind of take a break here and just say this is like the global awareness of literally millions of people who are looking to shift their consciousness. We are not alone. Okay, we are not isolated anymore. So there is some brilliant research that's been done since 2003. And those of you who are science-oriented, I have the most recent paper that came out was October of 2019, so it's very recent. Anthony Travawas. His research, his original research came out in 2003. There's also a research laboratory in Italy that measures the intelligence of plants and shows how they have independent functioning. And his research was challenged, and he met every critique of it and went way beyond it. So even the detractors of his research are now on board. And a lot of the research that's coming out now about nature intelligences is even coming from the agricultural industry. In other words, they are learning that there are some real problems with how they have been doing genetic breeding of plants. And I'll get to that. I think I have a screen on that. So plants are intelligent. And this is the part that I'm gonna cut out a bit of the science. I could get into it. But plants communicate, they have multiple senses. They're adaptive and creative. And human bias has obscured plant intelligence because we are fixed. So plants are sessile is what the technical name means, which means they're rooted in one place. They get all their nutrients from one location. They can fight predators from one location. They can get nutrients from the soil and from the sun. Okay, so they don't need to move around. We have to move around in order to eat, in order to get food, in order to compete. Plants don't need to do that. And so the critiques that are registered against plant intelligence are because they don't appear to be like mammals moving around. So science is still questioning, are plants and trees conscious and self-aware? There is some good science, there's some good research that shows that they are. I don't know how to fix this. Oh well. Previous, okay, oops, all right, I lost. There we go. So they have the capacity for learning, for making choices, for creative adaptation to their environment. These are all the hallmarks of intelligence, okay? We now widely recognize that our favorite pets are dogs and cats, and I was a child in one of my classes who said, and my goldfish have intelligence. So, and we're now recognizing, for example, that marine animals like whales and dolphins communicate by sound, and they communicate differently to their own pod, their own family, than they do to strangers. Okay, so this recognition of self and other is one of the hallmarks of self-consciousness. So again, I'm saying the research is not definitive about whether they have consciousness, but it's really moving in that direction. So this gets very close to Native American traditions, all indigenous peoples really, that say the entire universe is alive. You're going to see some books there about the conscious universe. Everything is alive, everything has consciousness, and we can communicate with it. So they're capable of learning, making choices, adapting to their environment. That link is to the most recent article, which I've printed out on the back table for some of you. So the question is, how many of you really believe that plants have intelligence and you can communicate with them? So some of you have experienced this already, right? And what kinds of answers do you get back? What kinds of responses do you get back that tell you something?
I need water.
I need water. Very good. Thank you.
Yes.
What?
They tell you, yes.
They tell you. And how do they tell you? Oops.
Vibrationally, I guess.
Okay.
Well, they droop, they move.
They droop. Okay, they move.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when we have gardens, humans have it's what's called a co-creative relationship with our gardens, where we are creating the garden and we are doing it in combination with nature. So we become partners. And this is like the new way of thinking about gardening and about all our relationships to plants, is that we have a partnership. The research is very definitive. Plants have multiple ways of communicating. I told you that there's a BBC documentary called The Wood Wide Web. There's children's book series on talking with trees. They communicate by fungal networks underground, and the fungal networks communicate with biological and chemical signals. They also communicate with pheromones, the sense of smell. They can tell how humans feel about them because we put out smells in our perspiration. Okay, they can read that because they're very sensitive. They have they're very, very tuned to smells. Trees, for example, can tell what kind of insect is nibbling on them by the saliva. Okay, they read the saliva of the nibbling insect, and they put out a scent signal, pheromones, to predator insects to tell them, oh, your favorite prey is nibbling on my leaves. Would you like to come and have a meal? And the predator insects come in because they recognize the smell. The tree is telling them what insect is there. Mm-hmm. So this is pretty smart. Mm-hmm. They get the very specific predator insect for what is nibbling on them. Okay? Mm-hmm. They communicate with other trees. So there's some acacia trees, for example, in Africa. When giraffes nibble on them, they send out this smell to all the other trees, and the trees put out things that are toxins. So they not only put out smells, they also put out toxins to repel insects. And they also put out this scent to all the neighboring trees to put out this toxin. So the insects are really smart, and the giraffes are really smart. The giraffes know that all the trees for 100 yards around have got the message. And when they start having a bitter taste in their mouths from the tree that's putting out toxins, they move over 100 yards away to go to the next trees that are not within range of that smell that the trees have put out. So the predators and the trees all adapt to each other this way. So their sense of smell, so that goes through the signal. They have an electrical signal that they put out on their leaves, and these are some of the fastest signals, okay? And this is where the secret life of plants was measuring the electrical signals of plant leaves, and that's how they knew when somebody who was really angry and chopped off their leaves came into the room, the plants would react. They could measure that with the electrical signals from their leaves. And so that's part of how plants actually are sensitive to emotions of humans. Some of the most recent research is that plants also, like they were saying plants don't talk, but plants actually do talk. They put out sound that is outside of the human range of hearing. So in Peter Wohleben's books, and he's a forester from Germany, he's become really well known. Suzanne Simard is another one who's become really well known. Peter Wohlleben talks about it's 220 hertz, but they've actually detected plant sounds at different ranges. Plants put out a particular sound when they're in pain, when somebody cuts them. They put out different sounds when they're relating to other plants that they know that they're connected with. When people come into the room that they love, they put out a different sound. So now they can actually hear plants. There is a language to plants just like there is to dolphins. Did you all know this already? Yeah.
I've been to someone's house. Oh, you don't have to photograph this. I've been to someone's house locally. She's been raising clones. And so she had attached sound devices to her plants, and standing there, the sound was broadcast, how the plants were communicating with each other. You could just stand and listen. It was fascinating.
What was the sound like?
Wow. So I was teaching these classes, and I hadn't heard anything unusual from plants or trees. I get messages, but I wasn't actually hearing sounds. And this person came to the class who's very sensitive to electronic noise. She cannot use a cell phone. She can't use a computer. She's a musician, so she's really attuned to very subtle music. And she's like a really deep person. And she came and she said, I had my ear against the tree, and I could hear the whole forest. And I went, oh, I have read about this. It's like the music of the spheres. And I went, I've never heard this. But she was hearing, I've been teaching most of my classes at Tryon Creek State Park. Anyway, so then I went and I tried it, and I couldn't hear it with every tree, but I did find a tree. It was one of the trees that had offered to help teach the classes. And it was just awesome. I heard the entire forest communicating. It was like the most beautiful experience. I never expected it.
What did it sound like?
It sounded like awe, amazement. It wasn't like rustling of the trees, but it was like buzzing, and I didn't hear this with every tree. Like, I tried listening, and so then later when I tried repeating this, I hadn't figured out that it was only certain trees that I could tune into. I thought, well, maybe I'm not calm enough, I haven't meditated enough, just like the guy who did spoon bending. I thought, well, I'm not doing it right, you know. But I realized it was certain trees. So I'm going to tell you another story, okay? So when I first started teaching, the Davis of the Columbia Gorge said they were on a special mission to help humans learn to communicate with them. And I needed to start my first workshops there. And you could go to the gorge and you could find people just like zoning out, looking at the river or the waterfall, and they were just gone. But that was part of what nature was deliberately doing with them. So they told me I needed to have my first workshops there, and then wherever I taught, they would go and help teach the local nature spirits and trees and plants to help humans communicate. Because when I teach, the plants and nature does half of the teaching. I teach humans whatever it is to get over our barriers, and the nature does the rest. And by the way, when I came here, I found the anchor tree that was holding energy for this class. Before I came, I got really early, and I found a really cool tree that said, I'm here to anchor the energy for this today. So then in 2017, when I got told to start teaching these classes again, there were these huge fires in the Columbia Gorge, and I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? And at that time, I was loving to go to Tryon Creek State Park, and then everything started talking to me, and they said, because we want you to teach, we've all moved here, and we're going to help you teach people here. And I go, whew. Okay, the gorge was closed, and then I started hearing from people, do you know how alive Tryon Creek State Park is? You can just go there and all the trees talk to you. And I go, yeah, I think I knew that. And then they're going other places. So this is becoming worldwide. It's not just Tryon Creek State Park. But when I go to an area, I have to go and actually be present with the trees. There are certain ones that are totally eager, like Temescal Gateway Conference Center in Los Angeles. When I just landed there, and I had been going to someplace else on a map because people had told me about different places to teach, and I got told, I was like trying to follow my GPS, and I heard this message that said, turn left here, and I go, okay. And I went, I'm not on my GPS anymore, turn left here, go up here. And so I ended at this place. I got out of the car, I walked over to a tree, and it said, we want you to bring humans here so we can help teach them to communicate with us. And I went, okay. And then flowers said the same thing, and the stream said the same thing, and they all were in agreement. So when I taught the workshop down there last Sunday, a week ago, people going up this trail were going, are you teaching people to communicate with trees? They all could figure it out. I've never met people who did that. And this one man said, how come you're having people go talk to that tree? I said, well, it's a wisdom tree and teaching tree. And he said, you are absolutely right. That is a 300-year-old oak tree, and it is the wisest tree around here. And he just went on and on. He was so happy that I was teaching this and I knew what I was talking about. So it was a very interesting experience. So now we're going to become a tree. We're going to have this exercise. I know we have this slideshow up. So you can stand if you want. And I want you to imagine that you're a tree. And it's easier because people think that trees and humans have a lot in common because we're upright. Okay. So we're going to be upright, and we're going to stand and imagine that you're a tree. think of a favorite tree from your childhood or a beloved tree in your yard or one in a park. And just kind of feel into that tree, like allow yourself to just be that tree for right now. And send your roots down into the earth. Become really deeply rooted. Feel the bottoms of your feet. Feel your rootedness going in. Feel how you get nutrients and nourishment from the earth up through the bottoms of your feet. Feel all that nourishment coming back from the earth. And then let your energy go up and send it off to branches in the sky. Like really feel yourself becoming a full tree. And let your branches take in the light. And I know that we're not at the time of year where we have a lot of light, but this is just practice in becoming a tree. And so feel the nourishment of the sky and the sunlight feeding you nourishment, and send it down again through your roots. And take a deep breath in, and if there's anything that's bothering you at all, breathe it down through your roots into the earth. And take the nourishment and love of the earth and let that come back up through your feet and out through the top of your head, and send that up to the sky and everywhere on the planet. And take another deep breath in and send your love down through your roots into the earth. And if you want to do Reverend Pipes' meditation, put your hand on your heart and visualize all that love going into your hand and send that down into the earth. So we are participating in sending love and blessing into the earth. And we're going through the earth to all the people who are doing similar learnings and similar classes everywhere in the world, because people are waking up in order to heal the earth. And we are part of that. And again, we're going to take the nourishment back up our roots and back up through our heads, through the top of our head, through our branches, and up to the sky, and release all of that. So this is part of the Become Like a Tree exercise. These are some people I was teaching it to. One of the people who presented at the IONS conference was Woman Stands Shining, Pat McCabe. She said, we remember the mind is in service to the heart. We remember the mind is in service to the spirit. We remember the mind is in service to the whole. We give thanks. And so let's send our gratitude into the earth. Use our minds and our hearts and our spirit to send gratitude and love. And what do your feet feel like now? Do you notice any difference? Heavy, okay. Mine are tingling. I have so much energy going through. Anybody else?
Big and boggy.
What?
Big and boggy.
Big and boggy, okay.
Really connected.
What I'm hoping is that you take all these exercises and meditations that I'm showing you, and I would love it if you would do on your own. And you can correspond with me. I'll give you my email or something. I'd love to hear how it works for you. But this is something that, yes, thank you for saying that, by the way. Let's do it on our own and have the awareness that we are doing it together, that we are all united in consciousness as we do it together, that we are participating as one, and we are contributing in that way. So heart math, Roland McCready is one of the people who presented at IONS, and so it's how our hearts and physics and the Earth's electromagnetic field all connect. And so and he's been doing research for 30 years. When we are in a state of heart-brain coherence, then our hearts beat at a particular frequency that facilitates gratitude, happiness, and better communication. The relation of the magnetic field of the heart to the magnetic field of the earth, this is part of their research, how that can improve the world. Technology isn't going to shift the problems we have in society. It's going to take a shift of consciousness. There's 4 ways that the heart and brain communicate. Neurologically, by the transmission of nerve impulses, the heart sends more nerve signals, neurological signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Energetically, via magnetic fields. Roland McCready has measured the magnetic fields, and when our hearts and brains are in coherence, we are also in coherence with the magnetic field of the earth, and it communicates to all the cells of our body. The heart also produces neurotransmitters, a major source of hormones, especially oxytocin. And I wonder what the fourth one was. Stephen Harold Buhner has worked with indigenous peoples, and this is a book, The Secret Teachings of Plants, The Intelligence of the Heart in the Direct Perception of Nature. And indigenous peoples use the heart to find information about plants. So they all went to the plants, used their hearts to tune into them, to find what the medicines were. And Western science still relies on indigenous people and their understanding of medicines to go in. They didn't have laboratories separating out things, but they knew what things produced medicines. And it's because the heart's ability as an organ of perception. So he also discusses the electromagnetic nature of the heart. Okay, so spoon bending and earth healing. So how is that related? It's when we have focused intention and consciousness, we can create a change. I'm going to skip some of this. You probably know about mother trees. Do you all know about mother trees in the forest? So, okay, I'll do really briefly. So he was a forester, and he has had a huge influence. And Suzanne Simard is from British Columbia. And she also was a forester, and she went into research, and her team discovered a lot of things. They found that when they did clear cutting, they cut all the trees, including what they call now the mother trees. They did not discriminate, and that broke up the ecology of the forest floor, and it never recovered. And so the trees of plantations that humans plant have nothing like the survivability. They're not as healthy. They get easily attacked by insects. The trees do not communicate with each other and protect from predators. They can't recognize insects that are going to gnaw on them. So there's infestations of pine bark beetles and all these other ones in the tree plantations. The old forests did not have that problem because they created their own microclimate. So what they call mother trees actually recognize their own offspring. So the trees produce hundreds, maybe millions of seeds, and some of them become their own trees that are outside their drip line. The mother trees, the huge ones, take over the forest canopy. So there's maybe only 5 to 10% of the light gets through their canopy. So how can those younger trees actually grow without any light? Well, the trees take in all the light, and they do the photosynthesis, and they manufacture these sugars that go down through the mycorrhizal networks, which I mentioned before. So the fungi in the forest floor transmit all those sugars to the offspring of the trees, and actually to a lot of other neighboring trees, to ferns. They act as a community. All the trees work together. They are not isolated. They're not separate. They actually relate. They know when a member of theirs is cut down. And when they've learned to do forestry differently. So Suzanne Simard, her research is showing that the Western scientific method itself is limited. Okay, so Peter Wohlleben is the one from Germany, but their research works in tandem. Both of them were in the forestry. And so there is the potential for working with the forest industry and the logging industry and saying, there is a better way to do it so that we have healthy forests instead of devastated ones, so that we don't have stands of artificial trees that don't have any relationship to each other. So right now they try to plant fast-growing trees because they want to get timber, but they don't realize they are destroying the potential to actually regenerate those trees. And so now Suzanne Simard is a researcher in British Columbia, and I'm not sure if her influence is only extended to British Columbia or all of Canada, but it's been very powerful. Her research is so significant. They have changed their forestry practices. They don't cut down the mother trees anymore. They are very careful. They do selective cutting so as to maintain the health of the microbiome of the forest. This is like a huge difference, and it helps sustain the planet because these trees produce oxygen at a very different rate than the ones that we do. So Peter Wohlleben says, these are quotes from him, some people say he's too anthropomorphic, but we need to become anthropomorphic because we need to recognize that trees have consciousness, so I don't have a problem with it. He says, wise old mother trees feed, and mother is just like a term, it could be grandfather trees, okay? They feed their saplings with liquid sugar and warn the neighbors when danger approaches. He says, reckless youngsters take foolhardy risks with leaf shedding, light chasing, and excessive drinking and usually don't survive. And crown princes are the ones that are coming up. These are tree whisperers, and related pairs of trees recognize the root tips of their own kin. So there's a recognition of self and other. And Simard says she would put tracers into the trees, and she could see by the mycorrhizal networks where those nutrients were going and how they were spreading. So she could actually measure that connection. And she said related pairs of trees recognize the root tips of their kin among the root tips of unrelated seedlings and favor them with the carbon sent through the mycorrhizal networks. She said, we don't know how they do it. We don't know. Okay, so she also says we don't know what these exchanges are like. Why, we may be cutting trees short and saying that they don't have love. We don't know how they treat their kin. We don't know if they're capable of love. But let's not assume that they don't. Many of you have deep relationships with trees, and they're loving relationships. Trees can also love each other. I just want to put that as a possibility because we don't know all the research yet. So I think I said all of this. So Richard Hammerschlag is one of the presenters, and the I don't end here. Who we are is beyond our bodies. How do we communicate with the field that's outside of us? So I'm going to go to a story of the Bramley tree. And I first heard of the Bramley tree, which is an ancient oak tree in England that's dying. I first heard of this from Dottie Coons, who's the coordinator of the Vancouver IONS chapter, and she sent this out just before I was presenting there. But I now have heard the story about the Bramley tree, and it's gone to thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world. It's dying of something called a honey fungus, which is a particular fungus, and it is dying. But people are going in and trying to use their intuition and their tree communication skills to find out why. And these are some of the teachings that the tree gave to people who are trying to tune in. The tree said, together the ancient mother trees connect Earth's dragon lines, which is what we call ley lines, okay, the electromagnetic grid of the Earth, and it creates a communication grid. And trees are here for more than oxygen. They keep the worldwide web of roots flowing. The trees are wisdom keepers, and they flow their wisdom forward to the next generations. As the number of trees is lessening, there's more wisdom and energy available from the ancient wisdom keepers than the young trees can handle or store, making their job almost impossible. Like, we are burning down forests at a huge rate. These ancient trees are many of them that are going. There aren't enough young trees coming up. So the Bramley tree had more energy than she had places to share it. And so one of the things they're saying in these communications, there's a new cosmic grid being formed. And if you are still reading or listening to me, you are probably part of this grid. And I want you to take the awareness from this, in addition to the meditation that you were talking about, take the awareness of this grid and go to your favorite trees in your yard and kind of be aware that there's a grid, and go to your trees and hold the awareness of the earth with your trees so that to help your trees connect. I'm going to tell a story of doing that. So Grumpy Old Man, it was a tree in a place, so I told you I was in Los Angeles. My on-the-ground coordinator there knew of this park, and I had been trying to teach her to communicate with trees for quite a while. And I found one that was a healing tree, but it was too far away. As I said, not every tree has these like really open-hearted communication qualities. So she said, there's a park really near my home. Could we try that one? So I went there, and the trees were all kind of, nah. And then I found one that I was just drawn to. It wasn't talking, but I felt like I was supposed to go up to it. And it was this huge oak tree. It had a double trunk. What I have found is that trees that have a double trunk are very often good for helping people make decisions. So they tend to be wisdom trees. It's like when humans are going back and forth, the tree embodies the fact that the trunks have come together and share a root system. And it can be two different trees that share a root system, or it can be one tree that has trunks that branch out. So this was a branching, it had two, and then each of the two had multiple branches also. So it was like really a good one for decision making. So I went up to it, and there were faces on it. Oh, and my friend was scared of the faces. She didn't want to try to communicate. And I went, this is going south. I feel like we're supposed to be doing something here. But it felt like something was really wrong with this tree. And I could hear all these men and boys behind me cussing and using foul language and saying violent things. And I'm just kind of going, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but we need to go to this tree. And when I left Portland, I told you the nature spirits from the Columbia Gorge came to Trine Creek State Park. And I was supposed to go visit it every day or twice a day or something. I never could get to it. And they finally said, we're going to send the nature spirits to you. So there's two trees right behind my condo. All the trees actually have it. But they have been my anchor trees. So one of them is a lovey-dovey tree, and the other one is a wisdom tree. And even if it's really cold, if I need to go talk to the trees, they surround me in a blanket of warmth. I could literally sleep there in the middle of a cold December Portland night. They're so warm. It's amazing. So they had told me when I was leaving that if I really needed their help, they would be available, both for me and for my Los Angeles coordinator. So when I was going up to this tree, I went, I think I need to call on you guys. So I called on them, and just this exercise of sending my roots, I sent my roots into the earth, reached out to them, and they sent their energy back and said, what's going on? I said, something is off with this tree. And so then they connected with the tree, and I went over, and the tree finally started talking to me, and it said, I'm not a lovey-dovey tree. Don't expect anything nice from me. I went, okay, fine. And said, you can call me the grumpy old man. I go, okay, that's fine, grumpy old man. Because it was really gruff. And it said, do you hear the nasty things those men are saying behind you? And I said, yeah. And I said, I have to deal with this all the time. In fact, it's my job to take all the toxins of these violent, foul-mouthed men and boys mostly who come here. So this was like, this park was a Frisbee golf park. And there were also men from a movie set who were doing movies, and they all talk really foul. And they said, our job is to take all the toxins from all these men and to detox them and to drain it into the earth so that they can go back to their families and their kids and society and have their humanity back. And we do this constantly. We are constantly cleansing them. And I went, no wonder. And he said, you can tell your friend to call me grumpy old man. I go, okay. And I gave thanks to my two anchor trees for helping this tree connect and start talking to me. And then I understood why my friend was scared. I explained to her the role, and this tree, by the way, said it was a lead tree for all the ancient oaks that were ringing this Frisbee golf field. I had pictures of the scary faces and my friend being scared by the scary faces. So she was scared. Oh, now we get pictures. Okay, so she was scared, but the anchor trees helped him open up, and when he explained his mission, that's me loving the tree and being so grateful, just pouring gratitude into him. And so we went back another time, and my friend finally started talking to the trees. She said, I am so glad you are doing what you're doing because this neighborhood needs what you're doing. It's like really, we're so grateful. And the trees said, both to me and to her, and it was the first time I knew she was really talking to trees because she got exactly the same message. The trees said, we are so grateful to all of you who are learning to communicate with nature or helping others communicate because it helps us in our mission. And I said, I'm part of this group that has over 800 people, and it said, please extend my thanks to this group. My friend heard the same message about how the tree was thankful, this whole ringworm. So I posted it with the pictures on this Facebook group, and the people started sending love, and they connected this tree to the grid. And at a certain point, the tree said, I'm connected to the grid. What a relief to know that this is a worldwide thing. We have been in isolation doing this thankless task for so long. What a relief it is. And the tree just started opening up, and it started warming up, and I could feel this happening from a distance. And today when I was about to leave for this, I got a text from my friend. She said, I met Grumpy Old Man. We call him Gom as a nickname. I met Gom, and he's saying, and he's really opened up and he's changed. And I said, well, that's the message I got too. And he's connected to the grid now, and he's part of the grid, and all these people are sending him love. I did not know that trees could do this, but they are part of the transformation of humanity just like we are. Now just imagine being with your tree and not only reaching your roots into the earth, but reaching your branches out to all the other people who are IONS, people who are indigenous, who've held this wisdom and who are teaching humanity this for a long time, for all the people who are doing tree whispering, all the nature-loving people, and connect with your branches outwards so that you are connected to what Native peoples called all our relations, all our family and friends who walk, who swim, who crawl, who fly. They are all our relations. We are one with them. Focus on your heart. Put your hand over your heart. Send that love. Take a deep breath in and send that love into your heart and into your hand. Fill your hand with that love. Draw it across your chest and offer it out, thumb to fourth finger, and send a blessing to all who are helping heal the earth. Because we are one. So Jude Curvin was the person whose readings first helped me find IONS Conference. I have her book, it's Cosmic Hologram. She writes about fractal patterns. She introduces some of the latest physics. And she said the apparent solidity of the world is now, it's 99.9% nothingness. But there are fractal patterns in how metals change their state, to river systems, coastlines, biological relations like rabbit reproduction, patterns of wildfires, earthquakes and galaxies, and also in human behavior. And she said to the same extent that all these things have fractal patterns, our changes in consciousness also has a fractal pattern. The more we do it, the more it ripples out everywhere. And I'm ending now with blessing the earth, and I want us to practice this and send love and peace into the earth. Go from here, recognize that we're in the solstice time, getting ready to bring our nutrients back from our roots and be ready to spring into new life in the spring. Go in peace. Bring our blessings and let it blossom so that all of us bring our intention of love and compassion to the earth and take your blessings home. So I'm finished. Are there any questions or discussions? I ended on time, right?
Yeah, you're good. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to have you do something else.